I'm Mark, welcome to the garage. Today we are going to relocate this rear facing license plate from this direction over to this side and make it perpendicular. Use this information at your own risk. I assume no liability. So my main reason for doing this is that this upper belt guard here, you see how close it is to the belt itself, all right? And I'm just not comfortable with it. It may be purely psychological, but if I don't need it, I'm just gonna get rid of it. I like less. If you do have a passenger, just remind them, don't be sticking your foot in the wheel well, keep your foot on the foot peg. A corollary benefit of moving that license plate is that now instead of your license plate facing the rear where it can be tagged by those pesky ticket cameras, it's now facing this way where it's not going to be photographed. So we're going to start by taking off the plate itself. This is a multi-phase process actually, which is specific in this case to a Daytec frame, and this is a 2005 Big Dog Chopper, and that combination, Big Dog and or Daytec, I feel like they kind of don't want you to move this bracket or remove this bracket, I should say, but we're going to do it anyway. So, taking out the license plate itself, the outer rim requires a 1/8 inch Allen. Very simple. We're going to take out these bolts. So now we've got our last bolt out here. We're going to take off the license and the outer bracket and just kind of put those off to the side. The next thing we want to address is these bolts that hold this part of the bracket onto here. But before we do that, we're going to take out the bolt back here, which requires a 3/4 inch wrench. And if you see it, it's right in the back, right there. That's your bolt. So we'll go ahead and get a wrench back here. And start taking this bolt out. All right, so to take this back bolt out here, we have to actually remove the caliper because it won't fit, as you'll see. And to remove the caliper, this darn thing is blocking it, this license plate holder. So I'm removing this back bolt, right? And you'll see now whenever I change my brake pads or check my brake pads, okay, this is now gone, right? I can't remove this bolt out until I remove the brake caliper, but as you can see here, I now have access to this caliper bolt right there to take off the caliper. And this takes a 7/32 inch Allen, and I can fit it right in there. So taking out this caliper bolt here, I gotta make sure whenever I take out caliper stuff, I know there's one washer's here, and make sure which bolt goes to which. And there could be a washer on this back side too, where the caliper meets the housing. Take out the bottom one. Now there's a washer there as well. And when I slide this out, I gotta make sure that I catch the any washers that come with it. So I already see one back here. So as I back this caliper out, I can push this bolt that was holding that license bracket through. so. I grab that and the two washers, and now I'm going to slide back this caliper here back onto the rotor, and then the washers, or I'm sorry, the bolts back into the caliper, and now we are officially rid of that pesky license plate mount, the stock mount. We're gonna use a 5/32 Allen to get these bolts off here. So we're going to take our last bolt off here, and that separates this piece out. Now we're left with this, and we've got to get rid of the LED license plate. This is actually just two regular Phillips head screws, like so. And that allows us to remove this little window here. There's two more bolts in the back. Get our little window out first. That's our light. And then these two bolts in the back also take a 5/32 or a 5/32 Allen. These two bolts in the back also take a 5/32 Allen. Alright, so I'm going to take out this last bolt here, and that gets rid of this cover. And you would think that you'd just be able to, one more Phillips head here, take this LED on through, but that's actually not the case. What's going to happen is it's going to not quite fit through this slot here, right? It's very close, but not quite. And if you put the cable side to the opposite side, it'll come a little bit closer, but you won't be able to fit it quite in there. So what we're going to do, right? You have to do this very carefully, is you've got to widen this hole out a little bit, okay? And so the easiest way to do that is we take a drill, make sure this is held here so you don't cut your cable, and we're going to drill it a little bit wider, just enough for this to be able to pass through. And once this passes through, we'll be in good stead. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to use a titanium bit for metal, and we're going to kind of widen this out like so. Notice how I'm pulling the cable back so the drill bit doesn't accidentally cut the cable. Okay, so we just winded it a little bit. It doesn't take much because this thing almost is going through anyway. And so now we can just very gently nudge it on through the hole, like so. And voila. Alright, so this cable actually goes through this tube here that's welded onto the frame and then up into the battery compartment. But on the battery compartment side, you'll find that this is the cable here, and it branches off like so. So what I want to do is I want to pick up the slack, take up some of the slack here, so I'll kind of feed this at the same time I'm pulling, because I don't want this thing hanging down. And once I've fed this through enough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this to the side with a zip tie, like so. And that way I have an extra LED light aiming into the wheel well. So we're going to take our license plate here, and this sheet here of 1/4 inch PVC board you can get at any hardware store like Home Depot or Lowe's, and it's about, I think this cost me about 16 bucks. And I'm going to put the plate on the board, and I'm just going to use a carpenter's pencil or any pencil or pen and outline it, because I'm going to cut the board. And this is going to give us a little firmer backing on the back of the license plate, because when we mount the license plate from the 2 holes in the bottom, some of the wind is going to blow it back and forth, and we don't want it to be blowing back and forth, the mounting holes being on the bottom, and then developing a seam right here, and then eventually cracking. So now we're just going to line up each line with the miter saw, and you can use a circular saw. These cuts don't have to be exact. I'm just going to do it because I have access to a miter saw here. Now the PVC is plastic, so it shouldn't scratch any of your paint, but if you're worried about it, just hit it with some sandpaper, just smooth it out. Alright, so here's our PVC board, 1/4 inch. We've gone ahead and taped the license plate to the back, and we're going to drill our holes here. I initially thought maybe in the center, but because that would cover up the numbers and the letters too much on the license plate, I went ahead and moved it down here, because this is a location where it's not going to affect the viewing of the license plate in case you do get pulled over. So measure these. I'm just going to drill 2 holes through here. It will automatically go through the license plate because this is taped up. So get a scrap piece of wood, and I personally like to step on it just to make sure it's extra secure. Make sure you get in the center. And the bit I'm using is just a hair wider than the screw, and I'm going to wiggle it around a bit just to make sure that I got plenty of room, just in case I mismeasured it a little bit. So we'll go in here and all the way through. So just like that, I got my 2 holes through the back, and you know, just in case that the screw doesn't, I don't want the screw to be fighting the holes here because it's pretty tight. I just want to kind of really get it in there nice and loose. I'll do the same thing from the other side. And this hole. Okay. So that screw should fit pretty cleanly through here, and it does, but it's not wiggling. All right, so now I'm just going to get some paint for the back side of this, because I know the front side is going to be covered with the license plate, and I'll match it as close as I can to the color of the bike. And as long as you get an outdoor paint, because your bike might get caught in the rain, then you're fine. So I'll just spray a little bit on the outside. so we've got our backing built up, and these bolts are 5/16 24 threading, and they're 2 inches long, and we used washers to make a distance. And let me show you, this nub here is a 1/4 inch, this is a full inch here, and then this being a 1/4 inch, that's right there an inch and a half, and we made up the rest with washers. And now we're going to go ahead and insert them here. Okay. Now, none of this should touch the belt or the pulley. If you're worried about it, when it does go through, you can always shave off the end of the bolt. Now you'll see these bolts are sticking out just a little bit here, and if you want, you can mark those and shave them off. I'm not really too worried about that because the belt typically doesn't go sideways. I'm more worried about jumping up and down when we had that upper belt guard. And this pulley shouldn't be moving this close to this bolt, so I'm actually going to keep my bolts here. What I am going to do eventually, and just do this at your leisure, is I'm going to add a couple of screws just to secure this plate into the board here. All right, so now what we're going to do is, just in the interest of kind of good housekeeping, we are going to cut down the protrusion of these bolts, these screws that have gone through here. So we put a couple of screws at the top of the license plate. These are going to be our mounting bolts into the frame. But we put a couple screws into the top of the license plate just because it was separating here and just to kind of hold it in together so the wind doesn't blow it apart, because then the backing is kind of useless. But before we can use this wheel to cut off these bolts, we want to secure it. And I'll show you how I'm doing it. It's just as easy to have a buddy or a roommate hold it on an edge of a table or something. But you can use this clamp here that secures down below to the table, right, and then it holds the object in place. And I have the towel just to protect the paint on here, and then this is in place, and we're just gonna kind of nip off the edges of these bolts. Why don't you come on this side, actually. So we'll start it up, and always wear safety goggles. Pay attention to the direction of the grinder. So if it's going this way, the sparks and everything are gonna go that way, and it might kind of come at you in the camera. But just do it carefully. I put some painter's tape here because I didn't want to accidentally, nick the paint. So be very careful. There's a little bit of a sharp edge typically when you cut off the end of a bolt, so we're just going to sand it down a little bit. Again, put some make sure you have some tape here so you don't nick the paint. And just so it's smooth to the touch. All right, so now these are smooth to the touch, fairly flush, and we're going to loosen up our clamp. Take our protective towel. There's our license plate bracket. Take off the tape, and I like to unplug the tools just for good measure so nothing ends up running that shouldn't be. And let's go ahead and put this bad boy back on the bike. Alright, so previously what we had is this array of washers here gapping over the frame to here, but and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to touch the belt or the pulley if this bolt extends and if the washers don't look right. But in the interest of aesthetics, again, you're not going to get chrome spacers or the exact length bolt oftentimes at the Home Depot. They have a limited selection, so you can go to an online bolt place, and I got these from Bolt Depot as opposed to Home Depot, And so I got exactly a 1-inch chrome plated spacer, right, for there. And the inside diameter is 5/16, and then I got a 5/16 24 pitch bolt that is 1 3/4 length. So when we tighten this bolt up, it should be relatively flush with the end here. So let's go ahead and put these on. And now we don't have to have this whole myriad of washers. We're just going to do bolt, bolt, through a washer here, and through a washer here. And I'll go ahead and put one of the gapped washers on each one. So I'll put the gap washer here, and then on the opposite side, so here are my spacers, and the opposite side I'll just do one regular washer. And then let's go ahead and tighten this bad boy up. Very similar to what we did last time. We just want to get it to look a little bit better. And now we have, these bolts are smooth and they don't protrude. These bolts are the right length, they don't protrude. We don't have these dull chunky washers. We got these nice chrome spacers. Cinch it up once. Twice. And let's go ahead and back away from that and see how that looks. And that should look a little bit better than what we had previously. And that's how we take our rear-facing license plate and make it a side-facing license plate, making use of the holes that were previously used for the upper belt guard. And now we have the peace of mind of that upper belt guard gone and not potentially hitting the belt itself. Thanks for watching.